Thanks for downloading Ehnother Podcast from anotherpodcast.com. Today's show can be found in many ways. iTunes, the anotherpodcast.com webpage, and now can be found on Stitcher.com. You can now stream the latest show anywhere with the Stitcher app, on your computer, even on your boss's computer. Ehnother Podcast is now at your fingertips every day of the week and at your convenience. Enjoy today's episode of Warlock Wednesdays. anotherpodcast.com. Not a sponsor. Hello everyone and welcome to another Warlock Wednesdays. This is the Warlock Hour and I'm your host Razor, here with another great week of entertainment news, comic book releases, sports news, everything in between. Let's get right to the things that we go for, which is, of course, first of all, the comic book releases for the week. So what comic books can you pick up today? Well, let's take a look at DC Comics. They've got their Month of Evil going very well. Forever Evil started last week, and they're continuing on throughout the entire month of September. And here are the issues for this week that might pique some interest. Batman number 23.2, featuring the Riddler on the cover. Detective Comics number 23.2 with Harley Quinn on the cover. Flash number 23.2 with Reverse Flash on the cover. Justice League number 23.2 with Lobo on the cover. And Superman number 23.2 with Brainiac on the cover. So those are your some of the issues anyways from DC Comics this week that continues on with their Month of Evil. Moving over to Marvel, the comics from Marvel this week: Deadpool number 16, Kick-Ass 3 number 3 of an 8-part miniseries, Mighty Avengers number 1, Wolverine number 9, and X-Men number 5. From the independents this week, Boom Studios has a limited series starting up with Sons of Anarchy number 1 of a 6-part miniseries. Dark Horse Comics has Star Wars number 9. And from Dynamite Entertainment, 3 titles for your pleasure or enjoyment. Kevin Smith's Bionic Man number 23, as I've mentioned many times before. This is based on a movie script that Kevin Smith wrote that never got greenlit, so has been turned into a comic book. Also from Dynamite, Red Sonja number 3 and Shadow number 17. And finally, this week's comic book releases finish off with from Image Comics, Walking Dead number 114. That is your comic book releases for this week, September the 11th, 2013. So let's hope that some of those comics you're looking for are on the list. And remember, if they're not, send me a message, leave me a message, or, just kind of leave a comment and let me know which comic titles you want me to follow, and I'll add them to the list. So let's move into some entertainment news, and we got a good slate of it. As always, we're going to start off with the box office numbers from this past weekend. Number 1 movie is no surprise. I predicted it would do about 20 million. I was very close. If you listened to Real Music yesterday over on this network, anotherpodcast.com, you heard me say that Riddick was probably destined for about a $20 million weekend. Again, I was very close with 19 million for the number 1 spot for Riddick, which is really good because it's already over half the budget made, and this movie was made by basically Vin Diesel himself, and we'll get into more of that just a little bit later on. I got some news about that. Number 2 was Lee Daniels is The Butler, 8.4 million. So quite a gap there. I think that this weekend was a very light weekend as far as movies are concerned, but that's okay. Number 3 this week, Instructions Not Included, moving up actually because it added another 369 screens that brought its total up. So however this movie is doing it, low budget film, making almost over $11,000 per screen at the moment, brings in another 8.1 million for the number 3 spot. Falling to number 4 this week, the spot that Instructions Not Included bumped it down, $7.6 million for We're the Millers. Holding strong at number 5, Planes, with another $4.1 million. One Direction, This Is Us, plummets to number 6 with $4 million. I mean, when you consider that it's a documentary and it only cost them $10 million to make, this movie's already doubled its budget. Even with $10 million spent in marketing, they've made a profit. Elysium is into the number 7 spot with $3.1 million. And a movie that actually jumped up 2 spots this week, Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters, moves into the 8th spot with $2.4 million. Blue Jasmine is in the 9th spot with $2.3 million, and The World's End rounds out the top 10 with $2.3 million. Blue Jasmine, just so that they did make a little bit more than The World's End. Blue Jasmine made $2.34 million, where The World's End made $2.31 million. So there is a gap there of about $30,000. Moving on to the new releases for this coming week, it is going to be Friday the 13th, so what's a Friday the 13th without a scary movie coming out? Insidious Chapter 2 comes to theaters this week, as well as the mob comedy The Family, starring Robert De Niro, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Tommy Lee Jones. For those of you who haven't seen Insidious Chapter 1, I'm sorry, I can't help you. For those of you who have, well, you're in for more of the same, but apparently the ghost is now attached, or the entity is now attached to the father as opposed to the son. So we'll have to wait and see how these movies do as they open on a weekend where there are festivals going on. The Toronto International Film Festival is well underway currently right now. It will be ending on Sunday, where the Sudbury Cinefest Film Festival and other festivals all across Canada pick up. So the Canadian numbers may be lower than the American numbers. I don't know if there's any film festivals going on in the US right now. I don't live there, so I'm not privy to that information. So those are your new releases. So let's get to some entertainment news. And first off, Marvel Studios has announced that they would like to do a female-led superhero film. Now, in the past, female-led superhero films have not done well successfully, monetarily speaking. They have not done great box office numbers. You think of Elektra, which was a Marvel product, but done by Fox. You think of Catwoman, which was just absolutely horrendous, having a horrible actor in Halle Berry playing in it was just horrible to begin with, and then the movie was terrible. You can't really pinpoint a superhero movie that has been done by either of the major studios, DC, Warner Brothers, Marvel. Various entities have put out products for Marvel, but now it's mostly Marvel. The one superhero that could be pulled off very well is Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, or Carol Danvers, has definitely seen a resurgence in the comics recently, and it would be very cool to see a female-led superhero movie. Now, here's the quote when talking to Louis D'Esposito. He was saying about a female-driven superhero film, there's obviously a drumbeat that is banging louder and louder that we want a female-led superhero. We have strong female characters in our films, from Black Widow to Pepper Potts to Peggy Carter, and you never know. Maybe there's an offshoot film with one of them, or, Captain Marvel. He also went on to say about possibly doing a movie like that. It's hard because we have a small group at Marvel. We do 2 films a year. To get those 2 films done and to do them right takes a lot of work and manpower. And female power, obviously. To add a 3rd film and to just put it in the slate right now is difficult. We have these next 3, 4, 5 films coming out, and that's what we're really concentrating on. Now, what they're referring to, obviously, is the rest of Phase 2 and into Phase 3. They've already got Thor, The Dark World, coming out later this year, November 8th. Captain America, Winter Soldier on April 4th, which that makes 2. Guardians of the Galaxy, August 1st of next year, which is 3. Avengers Age of Ultron with May 1st of 2015, which will be the end of Phase 2. And then we got Phase 3 with Ant-Man scheduled for November 6th of 2015. So that's their next 5 movies already set, plus the ongoing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. television series, and also the one-shot shorts that they've been doing and putting out on the internet and putting out on the DVDs. So it's very hard. However, there is a possibility in maybe Phase 3. I mean, Carol Danvers is definitely an Avenger. We can get her a solo movie and put her in Avengers 3. That would be awesome. So who knows what's going to happen, but I think with DC having failed so much and Fox failing with the Elektra character, I think we need Marvel Studios, a company that is definitely more dedicated to comics, to put out a movie. Okay, so moving on. Roland Emmerich has decided that he wants to do a reboot of Stargate. Now, Roland Emmerich, as you know, is pretty much the guy who likes to blow stuff up, especially the White House. That's his favorite thing to blow up. So it's really interesting that he wants to do a Stargate movie. However, he is the guy who co-wrote and directed the original 1994 film. So he went to the MGM, who has the rights, and said, we propose to them to do a sequel, but as a reboot. The reboot reboot it as a movie and then do 3 parts. So basically they'll reboot the original because the actors are too old, and then he wants to do a trilogy. He wants to do 2 other movies along with it. So it'd be a reboot, but not a remake. Like, they're not going to do the first one over again, but they're going to reboot the franchise with the possibility of doing a trilogy for MGM. So right now, that's what he wants to do. He's gotten nowhere yet with MGM, and who knows where that's going to go. Casting news for 22 Jump Street, which is the sequel to 21 Jump Street, which I just don't like because it is based on a television show called 21 Jump Street. The reason why it was called 21 Jump Street is because that was the address of the undercover place that the characters worked at. It should be called 21 Jump Street 2 or 21 Jump Street with a subtitle, but they've gone with 22 Jump Street, and of course Channing Tatum and Ice Cube and Jonah Hill all returning, and they've announced that Greek star Amber Stevens has joined the cast. So she will be playing a possible love interest. We'll have to wait and see. Moving on, Tom Hiddleston, meanwhile, obviously going to be in Thor later this year, and then pretty much done with the Marvel Universe unless something comes up down the line, has been tapped to replace Benedict Cumberbatch in the movie Crimson Peak from director Guillermo del Toro. Cumberbatch had to back out because of other commitments, and so now the lead has gone to Tom Hiddleston. Vin Diesel. Now, I mentioned earlier that it was interesting that they had already made $19 million on the $38 million budgeted film for Riddick. The reason why I say that's really cool because Vin Diesel, way back in 2006, agreed to do the cameo in Fast Furious Tokyo Drift. Not for cash, but for the rights to the character Riddick. He wanted to take the character from Universal Studios and make it his own. He wanted to have the rights to that franchise and to whatever was going to happen. So, not only did he sign to do the cameo, he also decided that with this, we'd be able to do a fresh start, and of course we know when it went from there. Fast and Furious, The Fast and the Furious, Fast 5, Fast 6, and now Fast and Furious 7. So that franchise has always taken off. With Riddick, he went out, he made the movie, and not only did he make the movie, he personally financed the film. Not the whole thing, but he took out a second mortgage on his house, he put his own money and went to the bank for loans under his name so that he could go into production in Montreal to finish the film, and then he turned around and came to Universal and said, would you agree to distribute the film with some equity on the back end. So basically, Vin Diesel took his own money to make this movie, and if this movie is complete success, it's a win-win. He doesn't lose his house, which I'm sure he's got more than one, but, you know, he doesn't lose his Hollywood home. He doesn't, he goes back to Universal saying, look what I did. And I think that's really cool, so I'm hoping this movie continues to grow. Alright, Terminator 5, which is to be the first in a new trilogy of Terminator films, has found a director. That director is the same director that's directing Thor: The Dark World. This director is Alan Taylor, and he's in negotiations to at least do Terminator 5. It's unclear where it goes beyond them, but he is in negotiations to do Terminator 5. Alright, talking about remakes earlier, or reboots, with the Stargate franchise being rebooted, it looks like the team of Hyde Park Entertainment and WWE Studios are going to be doing a remake of The Fall Guy. For those of you who are too young to know, The Fall Guy is an 80s classic television series created by Glenn A. Larson and starred the famous actor Lee Majors in a kind of like sounded like the A-Team, but he was one guy and he was a stuntman, and it was a really cool show back in the 80s. And I loved it because I grew up in the 80s. Well, it looks like not only is WWE Studios and Hyde Park Entertainment looking to put The Fall Guy on the big screen, they're also looking to sign former WWE superstar and current Hollywood superstar Dwayne Johnson, quote-unquote, The Rock, to star in this film. So this is interesting on many levels. I know me and Ralph Garman agree on a lot of things. Here's something where we don't agree on. He thinks this is a movie that will suck. And you know what? He could be right. He's been right about a lot of things. However, this is a movie that I'm looking forward to see for two reasons. One, I loved The Fall Guy. I know it's not Lee Majors, but two, Dwayne Johnson's in it. Dwayne Johnson is money right now. He's doing really well with his movie career. I've enjoyed pretty much everything that he's done. I would say The Scorpion King was a little meh. But, you know, that was when he first started out. Alright, talking about movies that will suck. The movie that sucked the most this summer was probably After Earth, starring Will and Jaden Smith. Now, before After Earth hit and bombed and flopped, or whatever you want to talk about, Will Smith said about Independence Day 2 when he was asked if he was returning, I think I'm going to start moving out of that and finding more danger in my artistic choices. And when talked to Roland Emmerich, he says, I sometimes say no, Will Smith will not be in it because he didn't want to do it at first. Now, things have changed. Ever since the flop, Will Smith is kind of looking for work. So, according to Roland Emmerich, we have a meeting planned, and we went to talk about it again. Anything can happen. Will Smith is now in talks to play in Independence Day 2. Now, if we go back to his first quote about doing more danger with his artistic choices, why oh why did he not sign on when he was offered the role first to do Django Unchained? It's questionable. That movie was a huge success and put Jamie Foxx really back on the radar. He had disappeared for a while. Now he's back on the radar. He showed his really great acting skills, and that movie was just absolutely fantastic. Now, would it have been a different movie with Will Smith? Probably, but knowing Quentin Tarantino, he would have gotten the best Will Smith ever. Because he would have just pulled it out of him. Jason Reitman wants to cast Adam Sandler and Cameron Diaz in his next film. He is currently working on a movie that is an adaptation of the satirical novel Men, Women, and Children. And he specifically wants not only Sandler and Diaz, but Jennifer Garner and Rosemary DeWitt to play in the leading roles. Now, I didn't know about this novel, so I had to look it up a little bit. And what it is the novel focuses on a family with junior high school students and deals with the sexual experiences in the digital age, where pornography has become extremely accessible through blogs and social networking. The synopsis that I did find said, in Men, Women, and Children, Colkin's, who's the author, Chad Colkin, incisive vision, unerring prose, and red light district imagination are at their most ambitious and surprising as he explores the sexual pressures of junior high school students and their parents navigating the internet's shared landscape of pornography, blogs, social networking, and its promise of opportunities, escapes, reinvented identities, and unexpected conflicts. He is still working on the script. He's still working with somebody on the script. It doesn't say who at the moment. Here it is. Eric Cressida Wilson. Cressida? Why do I pick names to read that are just Eric Wilson? We'll just leave out the middle name. There we go. This is going to be something that he's working on in the future, as right now at the Toronto International Film Festival, he's got Labor Day, which is airing there. He's also doing a live read of the script for Boogie Nights. So that's what he's doing at the Toronto International Film Festival this weekend. And he's got plans for the future, obviously. Alright, Poltergeist, another remake in the works, has cast another star. This star, Jared Harris. He has landed a part in the film, and he will be playing Kerrigan, a larger-than-life TV personality who left the world of academia behind to become the star host of a basic cable TV show, Haunted House Cleaners. So, we'll have to see how this remake plays out. This movie also, harkening back to the previous story, Rosemary DeWitt is the female lead in the Poltergeist remake, and we'll have to wait and see how this plans out. I don't know what's going to happen with it. I'm always very leery with remakes, but you know what? Evil Dead was one that was fantastic. Maybe this one can be done with the technology that there is today to be really good. Now, Latino Review, one of the sites that is, first of all, not a sponsor, but one of the sites that is definitely famous for putting out there information that has not yet been revealed. They are very good at discovering things. Well, it looks like that there's a huge possibility that Batman, or Bruce Wayne, more than likely Bruce Wayne, will have some sort of love interest in Man of Steel 2. There is a casting call going out in the papers for this role. They're looking for somebody in their late 20s and are open to all ethnicities, so not only does the 42-year-old Batman like him at least a decade younger, but Playboy Bruce Wayne doesn't discriminate either. Now, that was a quote from the article. Here's what they're actually looking for. They're looking for a woman in their late 20s, preferably somebody who is tall, of any ethnicity, and I believe they said well-toned. Yes, physically fit is the actual words they use. So that is the casting call. Now, speculation is that this woman is going to be a love interest for Mr. Batfleck in the movie, and it's not going to be Lois Lane or anything like that, because if they're casting for somebody else, it's very interesting. Could they be looking for a Vicky Vale or perhaps Julie Madison? And the longest of long shots, the speculation of the article goes on to say, and I agree, it's a very huge long shot, it would be Diana, aka Wonder Woman. So I don't think it's that. I'm gonna ixnay that already, but possibly Vicky Vale or Julie Madison is possible. Okay, so moving on. The Croods 2 has been greenlit, and they've already confirmed that Nicolas Cage, Ryan Reynolds, and Emma Stone will be back to voice the characters that they voiced in the box office hit The Croods. This movie, worldwide, has grossed more than $500 million. So, obviously a sequel had to be made, right? So, here it is. There's not too much talk about it yet. They have a lot of stuff to work out, namely a script. But D'Amico, who is the one of the directors, there was Chris Sanders and Kirk D'Amico, has said there will be lots of good creatures. We've got creatures that never got into the first movie. We're going to take a very, very close look at those. So they do have an original idea, and they're going to use stuff that they didn't use in the first one, in the second one, which makes sense. So, like I said, at over $500 million worldwide, a sequel was inevitable. Now, earlier I said Ant-Man was going to come out November 6, 2015. And at the time that article was written, that was the case. However, as of Monday, that date has been changed. Ant-Man is now moving up to July 31st, 2015. That is the new release date, which is full, August, September, October, almost 4 months, 3.5 months-ish before it was originally planned. And the reason is Pirates of the Caribbean, which is also another Disney movie, is not going to come out July 10th, 2015, because they're having issues with the script. There's no word exactly what's going on, but they're having issues with the script, and now the filming has been shut down, and it's in delay, and now it looks more likely that that movie will be a summer 2016 release, as opposed to 2015. Now, here's the other key thing. With the move to July 31st, Marvel now has Avengers Age of Ultron coming out May 1st. Then we get other movies, obviously. But Batman is also scheduled for the middle, or what is it, 2 weeks before? Yes, 2 weeks before July 31st. So that would be approximately, July 16th-ish? July 16, July 17, for Man of Steel 2. That means Marvel is bookending the summer. They're going to take the money at the beginning, and they're going to take the money at the end. Batman's only going to get what's in the middle. And with all the backlash that everybody's saying about Ben Affleck being Batman, maybe Kevin Smith's prediction of $2 billion might get cut down. Of course, nobody really knows Ant-Man, so Ant-Man might not take that much money away. All I know is this. Marvel has now bookended the summer of 2015. They got the opening date, May 1st. They got near the closing date, July 31st. August, that's when things start to wane off a little bit. July 31st is the last big date of the summer, and now Marvel has the two big ones for the summer of 2015, with Man of Steel 2 right in the middle. Not really. Kind of towards the end. Also, with the announcements that Disney is moving Ant-Man to July of 2015, and Pirates is moving all the way to the summer of 2016, we have a release date for Jurassic Park, June 12th, 2015, and there will be a name change. It will no longer be called Jurassic Park 4, it will be called Jurassic World. And it also will release in 3D. So, that is the movie news, and I have some other television news. That being, there are 3 top contenders for the movie, or not for the movie, but for the television series Arrow to play the Flash. Now, there is going to be an announcement by September 30th, because before September 30th, because that's when they have to start shooting the scenes that Barry Allen, aka the Flash, will be in. So we need some people, right? So here are the top 3 contenders. You have James McKay. Now, none of these actors I know, so I got a little bit of information on each of them. James McKay is an Australian actor who actually was the 2013 winner of the Heath Ledger Scholarship Award, which is a prize awarded to by Australians in film, a Los Angeles-based non-profit organization that serves as an industry guild for Australian filmmakers and performers in the U.S. He's a 28-year-old actor. He is going to be in the upcoming Singularity, directed by Roland Joffe. He's done other films, of course, in Australia. He was appeared in Cry Havoc Theatre Company's contemporary adaptation of Julius Caesar, and he was in the film Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. Excuse me. The second actor that's up for the role, Matt Barr. Matt Barr is best known for his role as Johns Hatfield in Hatfields and McCoys with Kevin Costner. He's a 29-year-old actor who was on the CW before in the very short-lived series Hellcats, where he played series regular Dan Patch. And the third actor that is up for this role is Grant Gustin, or Justin. The G might be pronounced Justin. And I would never know this guy because he played on Glee. Apparently he played the character Sebastian Smith, or Smythe, of the Dalton Academy Warblers. Justin won the recurring role of Sebastian, a promiscuous and scheming character, after an exhaustive weeks-long casting search. He is a 23-year-old actor, and I would say he's obviously the youngest of the three, and I think they're going to go for somebody who's a little bit older, so James McKay or Matt Barr have the inside track, in my opinion. If I was just to look at the pictures, and maybe I can get them up on the site so you can check them out for yourself. Just looking at the pictures, the best one that could probably be made into Barry Allen is probably James McKay. However, Matt Barr kind of has the slender look going. It's really hard to say. As of right now, if just looking at the three pictures and the three little synopses that I found, I would say James McKay would have my vote of those three. Of course, excuse me, if I had my choice, it'd still be Neil Patrick Harris. Alright, and this is television/gaming news. In Tokyo, Japan, the PS Vita TV was introduced. It is a 6cm by 10cm device, making it one very small piece of PlayStation hardware. What this will do will allow you to hook up to your television, and you will be able to use streaming services such as Hulu, and a lot of Japanese terms that I don't know. I'm guessing Netflix will be on there once it comes to the US, and you can access the PlayStation store. Now, it is outfitted with a PS Vita card slot and will allow you to play your PS Vita games on television. Now, there are limitations. Because the PS Vita allows you to have certain command inputs like touchscreen, rear touchpad, the mic, and the camera, etc., those things won't be able to be used. So there are games that won't be able to be played, but there are going to be over 100 PS Vita games playable on the PS Vita TV. There's going to be over 600 PSP digital games and over 600 PlayStation 1 and PC Engine games that can be downloaded through the PlayStation Store that you can play on the PS Vita TV. Also, this will be able to, in the future, it says that you're going to be able to stream PS4 games on another television in your house via remote play. Now, here's the one thing that I will say about this. It is coming in Japan in November of this year, November 14th, and it's looking like it'll cost about $100. And there is a bundle that will come with a DualShock controller, and that'll be about $150, but it's listed in yen, translated into $100. There is no word yet about when the international release, like coming to North America, will be yet, but you can imagine that this will happen at some point in the future. So that is something definitely to look forward to. At this time, we're going to take our little break, and because that is it for my entertainment news, and we'll come back with the sports in just a little bit.
Hi, I'm Rob Succhetto, and you're listening to anotherpodcast.com. Hi, I'm Rob Succhetto, creator of Zombie Portraits. You can check out Zombie Portraits at zombieportraits.com.
Welcome back after that brief little bit of pause. As always, if you want to check out Rob Schichetto's work, you can check out zombieportraits.com. So let's move on to the sports section of this podcast, and we're going to go with the NFL kicking off its first week of the 2013-2014 season. I don't know if it is the playoffs are pretty much the 2014 part, but whatever. The season doesn't end till 2014, so 2013-2014 season works fine for me. So first thing I want to look at is some referee calls this past week. There were some bad ones. First of all, we have the call that was made in the San Francisco 49ers Green Bay Packers game where the offsetting penalty should have made it 4th down. Instead, he said replay 3rd down, and San Francisco went on to score a touchdown. Would it have mattered in the scheme of things? Well, San Francisco ended up winning that game in a very close one with the Green Bay Packers. The final score on that one was, just checking it out, 34-28. So you take away that touchdown, and guess what? Green Bay wins 28-27. So, could it have been a blown call? There's no telling what could have happened with blown calls. Then we had another one now that one was a rule one where you have to blame the referees. The next one is kind of a, what do you call it? It's a judgment call. The referee, there's a new rule in the NFL that basically says a player cannot, put their head down and use their helmet to attack, especially when, going for a kick. Now, what happened was, the Houston Texans San Diego Chargers game, the Texans were going for a field goal, and the defensive tackle Cam Thomas was tagged with a 10-yard unnecessary roughness penalty when he made contact with the long snapper John Weeks. Now, it looked to me from some angles that he jumped over him, which you're allowed to do, but from the judgment call on the field, which you cannot challenge a penalty, it is a judgment call, that Cam Thomas actually hit John Weeks. So that penalty, that penalty led to, instead of being a field goal, gave the Texans a 1st down from the 9-yard line, and Houston went on to score a touchdown that made the lead at the time 28-21. Now, I should preface this by saying that I had to go to bed during this game. This game was the late game on Monday night. When I went to bed, this score was 28-7 in favor of San Diego, going into the start of the second half. Now, I groggily left the game on for a bit, so I know at one point early in the second half that the Texans made it 28-14. But it doesn't matter. 28-7 was the halftime score. I figured San Diego was very powerful. I'm like, okay, I know the outcome of this game. And you know what? You should never do that. But the problem is I had to work in the morning, and, I kind of needed some sleep. Some people were like, oh, you should have watched the game. It was awesome. You should have seen. You know what? I needed my sleep. I had to go to bed. I was falling asleep watching the game anyways, not because it was boring, but because I was tired. My body was tired. I had to sleep. What I missed was one of the biggest comebacks of the week, because not only did they score on that touchdown was a penalty, they went on to score the tying touchdown and the game-winning field goal to win the game 31-28. Now, here's the thing. San Diego dominated the first half 28-7. However, they were dominated in the second half 24-0. Houston's defense showed up. Houston's offense showed up. The only person complaining in the entire thing, Arian Foster, the running back of the aforementioned Houston Texans, because he had to split time with Ben Tate, who actually had a little bit better of a game overall. And this could be the way of the future in a lot of teams, especially Houston right now. Although, I'm going to say this before I continue. Week 1, sloppiest week of football I have seen in the past at least 10 years. I watched the Thursday night game. I watched 3 games on Sunday and a game and a half on Monday. So let's tally that up. That's 5.5 games that I watched this weekend. And I have seen some of the sloppiest football in the entire history that I've been watching football. Now, I've not usually had the opportunity to watch that many games in one weekend, and I won't for the rest of the year, mostly because, well, there's only usually one game on Monday night, and Thursday night games are going to be iffy. Monday night games are going to be iffy just because of television schedules and work schedules and that. The most I'll get to see is maybe a game or 2 on Sunday. Some Sundays I might get to see 3, but I doubt that's going to happen too often. A game or 2 on Sunday, and that's pretty much going to be about it. So, going forward, I'm not going to see this many games. But in the past, even when I've watched like 3 or 4 games in a weekend, I have not seen the sloppiness that I had seen this past week. There was turnovers galore. Star players were playing like rookies. It was just bad. But everybody needs to remember, everybody's all panicking and all like saying, well, this player didn't play very well. This team didn't do very well. This team was hugely successful. What happened there? Is this going to be the way of the future? It's week 1, people. The stars will shine. The top teams will be the top teams. The middle teams will be the middle teams. And the bottom teams will be the bottom teams. Yes, there's always some juggling around. Some of those bottom teams climb to the middle. Some of those middle teams climb to the top. Some of those top teams fall to the middle. Some of those middle teams fall to the bottom. And, some top teams go to the bottom. Some bottom teams go to the top. There's always juggling. But to get a clear indication, I say this. Wait till week 6. When week 6 is over, we'll know which teams are doing well, which players are doing well. That's when you're going to know more. 1 week is not enough to determine the entire season. If you look at some of these scores, some of them were just downright ridiculous. Denver crushed Baltimore 49-27. New England barely beat Buffalo 23-21. Shootouts in Detroit, with Detroit winning 34-24. Chicago 24-21 over Cincinnati. KC lighting up Jacksonville 28-2. A shootout with San Francisco 34-28 over Green Bay. St. Louis beating Arizona. That's right, I said St. Louis beating Arizona 27-24. Dallas, there was huge numbers in the last 3 games of the week. 36-31 for Dallas over the Giants. Philadelphia 33-27 over Washington, and Houston 31-28. Those are big scores. Not as big as 49, but still some pretty big scores, some very good shootouts. There were some defensive games. I mean, you had a 12-7 game in the Seattle defeating Carolina. You had a 21-17 game in Indianapolis over Oakland. The Jets barely pulling out a win thanks to a penalty, actually. The Jets over Tampa Bay. And that's the other thing. Everybody's praising Geno Smith for winning that game. Honestly, he didn't win that game. Tampa Bay lost that game. It's the same thing in Buffalo. Buffalo didn't lose the game, or New England didn't win the game. Buffalo lost the game. In the Buffalo situation, they had way too many penalties and too many turnovers, and that's why they lost. Otherwise, they pretty much dominated New England the entire game, and they only lost by 2 points because of a last-second field goal and some missed clock management in that fourth quarter. And it's a new coach. He wanted a system. He wanted to stick with that system, and he didn't stick with this. He stuck with the system too much because it cost them the win, or at least the opportunity to win. Over in the New York Jets game, Tampa Bay had the game in hand. There was not much time left. The Jets were driving a little, but they would have had no chance to kick the field goal. However, a penalty where a player went to make a tackle. I don't remember who. He went to make tackle. Guy had already stepped out of bounds. Got flagged for unnecessary reference for tackling out of bounds, it was a perfectly fine foul. He did tackle the guy out of bounds. He deserved the penalty. But it was that penalty that really won them the game, not Geno Smith. Without that penalty, this game probably ends in a 17, I guess it would be 17-15? Yeah, 17-15 for Tampa Bay. So, it could have gone either way. And those are the type of games that is just crazy. And then you look in Pittsburgh where Roethlisberger was sacked 5 times. Tennessee beat them 16-9. So there were some defensive games, but there was a lot of sloppiness. A lot of sloppiness. Jacksonville's only points was a safety. It just craziness all around. But it's week 1, people. It's week 1. So, after week 1, let's take a look at some things. Injury roundup. First big notable thing, Roddy White of the Atlanta Falcons looks like he may miss some time. His ankle sprain, quote-unquote high ankle sprain, looked like he was not ready to play. He played 37 snaps, where the third receiver, Harry Douglas, played 45 snaps. So he played less snaps. It looks like he may actually miss this week just to rest it up. We'll have to wait and see. Over in Dallas, wide receiver Dez Bryant will undergo an MRI after spraining his left foot on Sunday. Quarterback Tony Romo will play through his bruised ribs. And backup running back Lance Dunbar declared himself ready to return to the lineup after missing the last few weeks with a foot sprain. In Jacksonville, quarterback Blaine Gabbert has been ruled out already for Week 2's contest versus the Raiders. Gabbert needed 15 stitches to close a cut in his right throwing hand during Sunday's loss. Rookie cornerback CB, Dwayne Gratz is out at least 3 weeks with a high ankle sprain. And tight end Mercedes Lewis is unsure if he will practice this week after missing the season opener already with a calf injury, which means he'll probably be out week 2. Over in Detroit, Reggie Bush dislocated his thumb and pulled a groin muscle during his performance, and Bush said later that he was not too banged up. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, whether he will actually play in week 2 or not. Over in New England, Shane Vereen will miss a few weeks as he's to undergo surgery for a dislocated bone in his left wrist. Tight end Zach Sudfield was limited on Monday after pulling his hamstring on Sunday. Panthers right guard Gary Williams will be out for the season after tearing his ACL and MCL in his left knee during the loss on Sunday. Left guard Amini Salatulu is also out of the lineup with a hamstring injury. Excuse me. Also, over in Indianapolis, an MRI on tight end Dwayne Allen's hip came back negative. Allen said that he will be fine for this weekend, and Chuck Pagano, the coach, says that he will update the status as we get closer to Sunday's matchup versus the Dolphins. In Buffalo, rookie returner Marquise Goodwin will undergo surgery to repair a fracture in his hand suffered during the Patriots' loss. He will be out indefinitely. Free safety Jarius Byrd vowed Monday not to play until his feet are 100% healthy, which basically means Jarius Byrd signed his tender and now will probably sit out half the season, screwing the Buffalo Bills over, as they cannot do anything with him because he is an injured player. As a Buffalo Bills fan, I just find that disturbing. I think he signed it knowing he wasn't going to play a lot this season. Jeremy Curley has missed Monday's practice after failing the Monday morning concussion test that he received in the Jets' win on Sunday. New York Giants cornerback Prince Amukamara sustained a concussion of his own in Sunday night's loss, and he'll have to go through the concussion protocol before he's allowed back. Over in Tennessee, the Titans coach Mike Munchak downplayed the knee injury that knocked Sean Green out of Sunday's win, and he says Green will be available for Week 2 at Houston. And in Cincinnati, left tackle Andrew Whitworth has a chance to return from his knee surgery to face the Steelers on Monday Night Football. So that's your injury wrap-up. Excuse me. It looks like an update on the Shane Vereen thing. When I said that he'll miss a few weeks, it's going to be at least 8 weeks because he's been put on the injured Injured reserve with the designation to return. It's the short-term IR, which means he has to miss a minimum of 6 weeks, and he'll be eligible to practice after week 7 and play after week 9. That's what that means. So, and because the Patriots have week 10 bye, the earliest Vereen will be returning is November 18th. Also, it is to be noted that Danny Amendola and Rom Gronkowski, I should be able to say that, will not play this Thursday due to the short week, and the Patriots not practicing at all this week. So they're going to go no practice into that Thursday night game. Over in New York, the Giants side of things, there was 2 fumbles by David Wilson that really not necessarily cost the Giants the game, but definitely played a factor in it. And as a result, they've signed an old face. Brandon Jacobs will return to the Giants after having a year off, basically because of injury, and then San Francisco not using him and then waiving him prior to the playoffs last year. Jacobs had an up-and-down career with the Giants, and last played for them when they won the Super Bowl in 2011. So we'll have to see what he's probably going to be splitting time with the Darrell Scott. Shouldn't it just be Darrell Scott? Why did they spell their names weird like that? Makes it hard. All right. So enough with that. Let's get to the standings. In the AFC, the East had 3 winners. The Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Jets all putting up wins in the win column. Buffalo Bills obviously lost to the Patriots, so one of the teams had to lose. Over in the AFC North, nobody won. All the teams lost. Bengals, Steelers, Ravens, and Browns all came away with losses this past week. In the AFC South, again, 3 wins for the top 3 teams. The Colts, the Texans, the Titans all with a win, and the Jacksonville Jaguars take the loss. A split in the AFC West. Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos both win, whereas the San Diego Chargers and the Oakland Raiders both lost. Moving over to the NFC, we have splits in the first 2 conferences, or in the first 2 divisions. NFC East, the Eagles and the Cowboys win, while the Redskins and the Giants lose. In the North, the Lions and the Bears win, the Packers and the Vikings lose. Over in the South, we had 1 winner, the New Orleans Saints won their game, whereas the Bucks, the Panthers, and the Falcons all took losses. And in the NFC West, the Rams, the 49ers, and the Seahawks all win, with the Arizona Cardinals picking up the loss. Let's look at some statistics right now, and we'll begin with the quarterback position, as we should, because, that's just the first thing that I'm looking at. So, beginning with the quarterback... Alright, beginning with the quarterback position, the passing yardage, top 5 we'll look at. Peyton Manning of the Denver Broncos passed for 462 yards. Eli Manning of the New York Giants, so the 2 Manning brothers top the list, 450 passing yards. Colin Kaepernick with 412. Joe Flacco had 362, and Matt Stafford had 357. If we look at the passing touchdowns, we have 7 passing touchdowns for Peyton Manning. Yes, 7. 4 for Phillip Rivers, though he only threw for 195 yards. 4 passing touchdowns for Eli Manning. 3 passing touchdowns for each of Matt Schaub, Colin Kaepernick, and Aaron Rodgers. So let's move on to the wide receiving position and see what we got for touchdowns. Hang on. No, let's do yards first. So receiving yards, your top 5, Anquan Bolden of the 49ers had 208. A.J. Green of the Cincinnati Bengals had 162. Demaryius Thomas of the Denver Broncos had 161. Vincent Jackson of the Buccaneers had 154. And Andre Johnson of the Houston Texans had 146. And now let's look at the touchdowns for the receivers. Victor Cruz of the Giants had 3 of them. Leonard Hankerson had 2, as did Wes Welker of the Broncos. Sorry, Leonard Hankerson plays for the Redskins. Wes Welker of the Broncos, A.J. Green of the Bengals, Eddie Royal of the Chargers, Demaryius Thomas of the Broncos, Larry Fitzgerald of the Arizona Cardinals, and Julian Edelman of the New England Patriots. So let's get into the running backs, and we'll take a look at their totals. First, we'll look at the rushing yards, and we have 2 running backs, only 2 running backs, that went over the 100-yard rushing, and a quarterback. So first, let's look at your rushers. LaShawn McCoy had 184 rushing yards of the Philadelphia Eagles. Terrell Pryor, who's a quarterback for the Oakland Raiders, had 112 rushing yards. Shane Vereen of the New England Patriots, the injured Shane Vereen, has 101 rushing yards. And then Adrian Peterson with 93. Reggie Bush rounds out the top 5 with 90. Your rushing touchdown leaders, Adrian Peterson and Jacques Bell, each with 2, and then there's a bunch that have 1, so we're not going to go into that. Those are your leaders, though, as of right now. Let's take a look at the tight end position, just to see how they stacked up in the receiving yards and everything. Jared Cook was the top tight end with 141. Julius Thomas had 110. Jordan Cameron, sorry, I guess I'm not saying this. Jared Cook of the St. Louis Rams had 141. Julius Thomas of the Broncos had 110. Jordan Cameron had 108 for the Browns. Vernon Davis had 98 yards, and he plays for San Francisco. And rounding out the top 5, Dallas Clark of the Baltimore Ravens had an 87. Your touchdown leaders in that area, there's 5 of them, all with 2 touchdowns each. Jared Cook of the Rams, Owen Daniels of the Texans, Jason Witten of the Cowboys, Vernon Davis of the 49ers, and Julius Thomas of the Broncos. So, let's take a look at some defensive stats, and we're going to take a look at primarily 3 categories. We'll look at your top tacklers, which are your top 5, Gerard Mayo of the Patriots with 12, Duke Ininaccio of the Broncos with 11, and then Paul Posluszny of the Jaguars, Laron Landry of the Colts, and Bront Bird of the Chargers, all with 10. We're also going to take a look at your sack leaders right now, and your top 5, we're going to do top little bit more than 5. So your top ones are Justin Houston of the Chiefs and Robert Quinn of the Rams, each with 3. Cameron Wake of the Dolphins and Sean Phillips of the Broncos, each with 2.5. Zach Brown of the Titans, Desmond Bryant of the Browns, Jarrell Casey of the Titans, Mason Forrester of the Bucks all have 2. And we're also going to take a look at interceptions for the defense. And there's a whole bunch of people with 1. So the top 2 guys, though, each have 2. Dimitri Patterson of the Dolphins and Charles Tillman of the Bears. And just for fun, we'll see what defensive touchdowns there are. There were 7. So we'll go through all of them. Brandon Carr of the Cowboys, Barry Church of the Cowboys, Brian Cushing of the Texans, Dan Williams of the Cardinals, Tamba Hali of the Chiefs, Denorius Searcy of the Bills, and D'Angelo Hall of the Washington Redskins, all each had a touchdown for the defense. So that is the statistics for your NFL this week. Now I'm going to do something I didn't do last year because I kind of started my podcast late in the year. We're going to take a look at some fantasy statistics. We're going to look at the top 5 performers, or we'll look at a top few performers each week, and then possibly who you might want to pick up that's available on the waiver wire. So, your top 5 performers in week 1. Number 5, and this is based on normal settings. Every league is different. Custom leagues are going to change the settings. These are based on just normal, run-of-the-mill, default settings. Number 5 on this list is running back Adrian Peterson of the Minnesota Vikings, who had 33.1 fantasy points. He is no stranger to being in the top 5 list, of course. He was the number 1 pick in most drafts, and anybody who didn't draft him number 1, you're an idiot. Well, he started the game with a 78-yard touchdown run on his very first carry and went on to rush for 93 yards and that touchdown. He also scored 2 more touchdowns, 1 receiving and another one rushing, to give him this 33.1 total. However, they did lose. Victor Cruz, also in a losing effort, 33.1 fantasy points as well. He scored, through 3 touchdowns and 118 yards, giving him his 33.1 points. Number 3 in the fantasy points this week, AJ Green of the Cincinnati Bengals had 37.2. and he had 9 catches for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns in the loss to the Chicago Bears. So far we have 3 losers in the top 5. So can we get some winners? Yes, we can. The top 2. First, Anquan Boldin, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers, had 38 fantasy points. He caught 13 passes for 208 yards and 1 touchdown, which means in some leagues, crossing over that 200-yard threshold means he might get a bonus. Not in every league. As I said, custom leagues don't always have bonuses. Even some of the default leagues don't have bonuses, but the site I'm using for this is pretty standard. At 200 yards, you do get a 1-point bonus, I believe. And, of course, the number 1 fantasy point getter, a whopping 46.28 fantasy points. How could he not be after throwing for 462 yards and 7 touchdowns, which tied an NFL record for most passing touchdowns in a game? Peyton Manning of the Denver Broncos just dominated. And next, it's going to be the Manning brothers facing off as Denver faces off against Eli and the Giants. So Manning versus Manning, and we'll have to see what happens there. It could be a shootout, or it could be another Denver stomping. Now, who's available on the waiver wire that you might want to pick up? Well, we'll work our way down. Top 10. We'll do a top 10. And so, if you're in a deep league where you need a second quarterback, or a number 2 quarterback, as it were, chances are you could pick up E.J. Manuel. E.J. Manuel is only owned in 6.7% of leagues right now, and he put up very nice numbers against a New England defense. His fantasy points this week against New England was 16.3, where he threw for 2 touchdowns, and I believe it doesn't have his yardage on here, but I think it was in the range of 190 yards. Now, this was against a New England defense where Buffalo was always turning over the football due to fumbles or due to special teams or something like that. He did not throw a pick. He threw 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. So that is key, the no interceptions. While there were turnovers, there was no interceptions. It was penalties and false starts that really got the Bills. If you're looking for a running back, Jock Bell of the Detroit Lions had an impressive 52 catches in 2012, and this past week against the Vikings, he scored 2 touchdowns and 21.2 fantasy points. He is the number 2 running back behind Reggie Bush, and he might be able to be used as a handcuff, as Bush, we said earlier, could be injured. He is only owned in 4.2% of the leagues. Noshawn Moreno, usually known as No-Show Moreno of the Broncos, he's only owned in 17.3% of the leagues right now. He is in a committee, but that committee includes rookie Monte Ball and Ronnie Hillman, and he's still the starter. It should be noted that Hillman is owned in 66.1% of the leagues, but he's 3rd on the depth chart. So you might be able to pick up Noshawn or even Monte Ball, who's going to be probably in the mix a lot more than Ronnie Hillman, for those of you who own Ronnie Hillman. Number 7, Phillip Rivers, quarterback for the San Diego Chargers, showed brilliance at times on Monday. He's only owned in 15.5% of leagues. He threw for 4 touchdowns, scoring 23.6 in fantasy points, but then it was just a bad second half that led to the Chargers losing. But he showed that he can move the offense. And not Norv Turner, I forget who the new coach is, but obviously it's working well there. Another quarterback that you might be able to pick up, he is owned in 37.4 of the leagues around there, so he might not be available in your league, but it's Carson Palmer of the Arizona Cardinals. Palmer is no longer a default number 1. He's definitely number 2 at this stage of his career. However, you might want to look at his matchups. It's going to be a week to week with Palmer. Palmer might have good games, he might not. So it is a little bit of a stretch picking him up, but if he's available and you need a backup quarterback, you might want to look into it. Number 5 on the list, wide receiver for the New England Patriots, only owned in 1.9% of leagues. In this list, he's the lowest owned right now. Julian Edelman. It's going to be tough to figure out who Brady's going to pass to week and who's going to get the points. Edelman should not be ignored. He had 79 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Buffalo Bills. He was actually probably more of a number 2 and 3 receiver than he was a number 4 or 5 receiver as he was planned to be for the New England Patriots. So it'll be interesting to see, especially with Amendola out this week. I would say if you could pick up Julian Edelman, you might want to start him against the Jets this week, because with Amendola out, Gronkowski still injured, no other receiver stepped up other than Edelman last week. So, plus, for those of you who get return yards, he is a returner. Now, I would not pick him up if you have a good number 1, number 2, and number 3 receiver. He's more of a flex option, and a guy who, again, you want to look at matchups maybe first. Another quarterback who may be available on the waiver wire at number 4, only owned in 26.2% of the leagues right now, Terrell Pryor. Now, here's the thing. He might not be considered a top passer or even an average one. However, he can run. He actually set the rushing record for a rookie quarterback, I believe, with 141 yards. Was it a Raiders record? Might have been just a Raiders record, but 141 yards rushing in one game, plus over 200 yards passing. He did lose to the Colts, but there's definitely some upside here, and the fact that he can run shows that he's a possible number 2 backup for your starter. Number 3 on the list, Jordan Cameron, tight end of the Cleveland Browns. He is owned in a lot of leagues, 59.6% of leagues. He was a sleeper candidate on a lot of NFL sites, like fantasy draft sites, so he was a sleeper candidate, and some people, obviously almost 60% of people did pick him up. However, to show that he is living up to expectations, he had 108 yards and 1 touchdown with a very solid 16.8 points from the tight end position, which we all know is not always a great position to try and fill. Norv Turner is the coach in Cleveland right now, and he could definitely be a number 1 tight end in this league going forward. Owned in 54.1% of leagues currently, running back Le'Veon Bell is injured for the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, with the Pittsburgh Steelers backfield in a mess, Bell will definitely be somebody you might want to pick up if you have that spot. He will be back within a couple of weeks. However, if you can get him now, you might want to hold a spot for him on your roster because he is going to be the man in Pittsburgh. And the number 1 fantasy pickup, if you can pick him up on the waiver wire this week, tight end for the Denver Broncos, Julius Thomas, only owned in 7.6% of leagues. And to put it to you like this, I play in 14 fantasy leagues this season. He was only not available in 3 of them. And one of them, I had him. So only in 2 leagues, he was not available. I put in my waiver request. Have you put in yours? You better do it fast, because once that waiver wire is open on, whether you open it on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, it's definitely going to be rushed to get Thomas. He had a great start. Now, it might be his best game of the season with 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. But you know what? With Peyton Manning as your quarterback, he likes to spread that ball around. He threw 7 touchdowns. Now, this is not going to happen every week, but 2 touchdowns went to Thomas. 2 touchdowns went to Demaryius Thomas. The other went to Julius Thomas. And 2 touchdowns went to Wes Welker with another thrown in there. It might have been Eric Decker. I don't even know. There was just so many touchdowns scored. He's not going to do that every week, but he will definitely be a number 1 receiver or number 1 tight end in most leagues after week 1. And I know in every league that I can pick him up in, I'm going to try and hopefully get him starting on my team. So that is it for this week's fantasy update. Let's get into some WWE action, because this weekend is WWE Night of Champions, where every match is a championship match. And we have no challengers for the tag team champions. So, at the kickoff party, before the event starts, which I don't get to see because I go and watch the event at my theater, and the event is only available on YouTube, which we have no Wi-Fi at my theater, so I can't watch it. The pre-show is going to have, or the kickoff show is going to have a Tag Team Turmoil #1 Contenders match with the primetime players taking on the Usos, Tons of Funk, the Real Americans, and 3MB. My prediction? The Usos win this match to go on to face the Tag Team Champions, The Shield, and then lose. I think The Shield are going to retain their titles throughout. They have not yet set, as far as I know, it's not on the website, and I don't like going all over this site because they spoil too many things. They have not yet said whether Dean Ambrose will be defending his U.S. title, but all championships are supposed to be on the line, so I'm also going to pick Dean Ambrose to win if his title goes up for grabs. Divas Championship is obviously on the line. AJ Lee will be in a fatal 4-way match against Natalya, Brie Bella, and Naomi. AJ Lee is definitely my pick to win. However, I would not be surprised if this championship goes to Natalya. She's Canadian, so I'm happy with that. As long as AJ Lee or Natalya win, I'm happy, because you know what? They're the only two wrestlers in the match. They're the only two women who know how to wrestle. Out of the 3 women that know how to wrestle that are in this match in the entire WWE. AJ Lee, Natalya, and Beth Phoenix. And I'm not even sure if Beth Phoenix is still part of the WWE. So, I haven't seen her for such a long time. Those are the only 2 that can wrestle in this match, so AJ Lee or Natalya are going to win. I know it's not really a pick, but it's a toss-up. I think we could see a possible team-up of Naomi, Natalya, and Brie Bella taking out AJ Lee, and then the 3 of them taking on each other. That's honestly what I can see happening. And then Natalya winning the match. That's what I'm thinking right now off the top of my head. And then we come to the Intercontinental title match, but it's not for the title, which is stupid. It's called Night of Champions, WWE. Every title is supposed to be on the line. I don't think this is for the title. As far as I know, there is no championship thing here. It's CM Punk versus Curtis Axel and Paul Heyman in a handicap elimination match, which means Punk will eliminate Curtis Axel and get his hands on Paul Heyman. That's what I'm predicting. No title. Boring match. Alright, World Heavyweight Championship match. Alberto Del Rio versus Rob Van Dam. Prediction? We are going to have a new world champion, and his name is Rob Van Dam. That's right, I'm predicting RVD wins the title versus Alberto Del Rio. Although, it would just be like Del Rio to send Ricardo Rodriguez over to Van Dam's side and then have him screw him over. Still picking RVD. Alright, and then of course the main event is Randy Orton, the corporate sellout, handpicked by COO Triple H to be the face of the WWE, taking on the goat-faced, puny little Daniel Bryan. Now, he's not puny, but he's smaller than your average champion. And in this match, it's really hard to say. Randy Orton just got back into the WWE's good graces. Building him up as this huge champion, working for the company, so to speak, I would say that Randy Orton's probably going to retain. However, I could also see Daniel Bryan walking away with this. So my pick is that Randy Orton keeps the belt. And we're going to see more stuff done to Daniel Bryan, and I just don't know where this is going. We've got a new corporation kind of going around. It's the Shield and Randy Orton and Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. That group is like taking over right now. Maybe we'll see something happen in the near future, but with Cena out, CM Punk's probably going to have to get back into the title hunt soon. So hopefully this whole thing with Paul Heyman ends at Night of Champions, is why I'm picking him to win, to eliminate Curtis Axel and then take out Paul Heyman for a little bit. We need to get CM Punk back into the title, probably. Or we got to get Daniel Bryan winning it, and we got to have Randy Orton coming after him and stuff. Because with Cena out till probably WrestleMania, it's hard to say. Well, he might be back for Royal Rumble. There is an outside chance he could be back for Royal Rumble. But they don't have the number one quote-unquote good guy, or the guy that has the most controversial allegiances, with people cheering and booing and everything. It's just going to be a different WWE for quite some time. Alright, we've come to the final sports segment, baseball. Let's get to the standings, and they are in the American League. Your AL East leaders are the Boston Red Sox with an 88-58 record. Then you have the Detroit Tigers leading the Central with an 82-62 record. And the Oakland Athletics holding on in the West with an 83-60 record. Right behind them and holding the number one wild card at the moment are the Texas Rangers with an 81-62 record, followed by the Tampa Bay Rays with a 78-65 record. Moving over to the National League, your NL East leaders are the Atlanta Braves at 87-57. The Central leaders are the St. Louis Cardinals with 83-60. And then in the West, it's the LA Dodgers with an 84-59 record. Holding the two wild cards right now, Pittsburgh, 82-61, holds the top wild card, while the Cincinnati Reds hold the second wild card at 82-63. Some statistics for baseball. Your average leaders are, from the Tigers, Miguel Cabrera batting .353, Mike Trout of the Angels batting .338, as well as Chris Johnson of the Braves batting .338. Michael Kadire of the Rockies is batting .327, with Jason Worth of the Nationals rounding out the top five batting .324. Your home run leaders, Chris Davis of the Orioles has 48, Miguel Cabrera of the Tigers has 43, Edwin Encarnacion of the Jays has 36, Pedro Alvarez of the Pirates has 32, and then we have four players tied at 31. Your RBI leaders, Miguel Cabrera of the Tigers holding on to the number one spot with 133, Chris Davis of the Orioles has 124, Paul Goldschmidt of the Diamondbacks has 107, Edwin Encarnacion of the Jays has 104, and Adam Jones of the Orioles has 102. Your stolen base leaders, Jacoby Ellsbury of the Red Sox has 52, Rajai Davis of the Jays and Jean Segura of the Brewers each have 40, Elvis Andrus of the Rangers has 39, and the suspended Everett Cabrera is still holding on to the fifth spot of the Padres with 37. That should be gone within a week or two. Hopefully next week we'll have him off the list. Not hopefully, but I mean, it's just funny that he's still holding on. He's been suspended for the last, I think 3 or 4 weeks. Your ERA leaders, Clayton Kershaw of the Dodgers has a 1.92 ERA, leading the way. Jose Fernandez of the Marlins has a 2.23 ERA. The injured Matt Harvey of the Mets has a 2.27 ERA. Anibal Sanchez of the Tigers has a 2.61 ERA, and the fifth, rounding out the fifth anyways, is Zach Greinke of the Dodgers with a 2.79 ERA. Your wins leaders, Max Scherzer of the Tigers has 19 still, didn't get his elusive number 20 yet. Jordan Zimmermann of the Nationals just got his 17th on Tuesday night to put him into second place, and then we have a three-way tie with 16 wins for third. Jorge De La Rosa of the Rockies, Chris Tillman of the Orioles, and Adam Wainwright of the Cardinals, all with 16 wins. Your strikeout leaders, Yu Darvish of the Rangers still leading the way with 246, Max Scherzer of the Tigers has 215, Clayton Kershaw of the Dodgers has 208, Chris Sale of the White Sox has 207, and Felix Hernandez of the Mariners has 200. Your saves leaders, Craig Kimbrell of the Orioles has 45, Jim Johnson of the Orioles has 43, Mariano Rivera of the Yankees has 41, Greg Holland of the Royals has 40, and then Joe Nathan of the Rangers and Rafael Soriano of the Nationals each with 39. That is your statistics. That is the show for this week. Remember, I just messed that up. That is the show for this week, so if you enjoyed the show, please come back and listen to it every week. Remember, you can always find us on anotherpodcast.com. That's EHNOTHER podcast.com. You can also find us on iTunes under Another Podcast, and you can also find us on Stitcher.com. Also, for my show and some of the older shows of the Ehnother Monday and Real Tuesday can be found on YouTube. You can check those links below. If you like the show, come back and listen every week. But you can also like the Facebook page, and it will tell you when every show is posted. So, hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you come back next week. And that is it for Warlock Hour. I'm Razor, I'm your host, and I'm out. Thanks for listening to Ehnother Podcast from anotherpodcast.com. Don't forget to go on iTunes and or download right from anotherpodcast.com. That's EHNOTHER podcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at Ehnother Podcast. Be sure to check back for tomorrow's show only on Ehnother Podcast, your Canadian podcast network. anotherpodcast.com. Not a sponsor.